Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to all who are joining us here in person and all joining us via our live stream. Wonderful to be able to come together and warm ourselves with the beauty of Shabbat. And so we'll begin on page 2 and invite Pam to light our Shabbat candles.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Struggle with this. I always struggle with this consistently.
Push forward.
Uh-huh.
And then-
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Your magic touch. The ribbon touch. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu v'halakner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
One of the ways that we begin to get ourselves ready for Shabbat is to kind of engage in music, right? Singing, and especially music that allows us to leave behind the complications of the week that we have just finished. And so we'll begin with Ozi v'zimrat Yah, God is my strength and my salvation.
Ozi v'zimrat Yah, v'yehi li Yeshua. Ozi v'zimrat Yah, v'yehi li Yeshua. Ozi v'zimrat Yah, v'yehi li Yeshua. Ozi v'zimrat Yah, v'yehi
And on page 10, we join in Hine Matov.
Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
As we welcome Shabbat into our hearts and our lives, we turn together to page 20 for Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi Mikrat Kala Yalalai 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 P'nei Shabbat Tekavela. Lecha Dodi Mikrat Kala Yalalai 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 P'nei Shabbat Tekavela. לשם ותפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, יללי, 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 פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, יללי, 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 פני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, יללי, 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 פני שבת נקבלה. Found it.
Please, we'll continue with Mizmor Shir, the Yom HaShabbat, a song, a psalm for Shabbat on page 22.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי אסור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בחינות. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
On page 24, we continue as we welcome each other with words of welcome, Shalom Aleichem, and responding, we say, Aleichem Shalom.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Lishalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzidchem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi
We turn together to page 26 as we rise for Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadav, Yitgadash me Rabba, Be'amad Yivarach Chirutei, Ve'amlich Malchutei, B'chayechon, U'v'yomechon, U'v'chayedecho Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, U'v'zman Kariv, V'meru, Amen. Yehesh me Rabba mevorach, le'olam olam me'amaya, yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei kodesha, barichu, leila min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, mimeru, amen.
And on page 28, we join in Baruch.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach, Baruch Adonai hamavorach, le'olam va'ed.
Please be seated. There was a brief conversation right before services started about the prayer book, which sometimes is confusing. And this page is probably one of the great examples of the sort of layout or the process of the prayer book. So on this side, which has the Hebrew, the transliteration of the Hebrew into English characters, and also a literal translation, or as close to a literal translation as you can get, is always on this side of the page. Right. And on the opposite side of the page, almost always are one or two interpretive options. So as we go through any particular version, we might read something on this side of the page and then go to the Hebrew of the prayer, or we might just read the interpretive piece, or whatever might work for the theme or the moment of the day. But if you're ever wondering why it's set out like that, it's set out in this folio kind of a way so that the entire page as it's open is all really the same prayer. And then below are some notes of interest or origin, or, where the text might originate from. Just so you have that piece there. So as we turn together to page 30, we join in Ma'ariv Aravim, the prayer that thanks God for the miracles, the wonders of creation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem b'rakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, godel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, uma'avdil ben yom uvein layla, Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv Aravim. Page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Ahavat olam, made Yisrael, Amecha avta, Amcha avta, Torah mitzvot, Chukim u'mishatim, Otanu Marita, Otanu Marita, Alkein Adonai Elohim Shofenu, Uvkumeinu Nasiach Bechukecha, Venizmach B'divrei Toratecha, U'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla negei yomam v'layla ve'ahavatcha l'tasir Mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Yisrael.
We rise together for Shema, page 34.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Elohim Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated as we'll continue page 36 with the Ahavta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha Hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, uv'shachbecha uv'kumecha. Ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha, leman tizkeru, asitem et kol mitzvotai, V'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, v'hiyot lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Adonai Elohechem. Let's join together in the middle of page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai Lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei pele, nora tehilot osei pele.
מלכותך ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. Page 43, let's join together at the very top of the page. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will.
Baruch atah Adonai haborei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu el kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haborei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael.
Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, rebuild a weakened will. So rise for Amidah on page 46.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi agid tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chazdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula lifnei v'neihem, L'man Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol ha'tara v'hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'mariv hagashem, Mechalkel chayim b'chesed, Mechayeh hakol b'rachamim rabim, Somech noflim v'rofeh cholim, U'matir asurim, U'mekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha bal geburot, U'midomei loch, Melech memit u'mechayeh, U'masmiach Yeshua, B'ne'eman atah l'hachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, קדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Please be seated as we continue, top of page 53. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see, wherever we gaze, that the bush burns unconsumed. And we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Let's join together in the top of page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Shabbat. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. Let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirat na'avod. Page 59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us, so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha lecha na'eh lehodot. And together at the top of page 61, grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message
to all the peoples of the earth.
Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. Make contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace.
Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael בכל עת ובכל שעה, בשלומך. שלום רב ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם.
We take a few moments, leaving the prayer book aside, the opportunity to look inward to our own hearts, our own thoughts and prayers. Some moments of silence.
יהיון רצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגלי,
We take some time and think of all those in the world, in our lives, in our community, who need our blessing of healing, who need our energies to make them or help them in their journey of recovery, whether that is a healing of body or mind or heart or soul. And so we think of especially Steve Tottleben and Diane Levy, Joan Rosenthal, Sarah Parton, Martha Snyder, Brooke Gelman, Jay Kaler, Debbie Perry, Shelley Schloss, Diane Kaler, Jay Schuster, Lori Samuels, Dane Marcinowski, Maggie Lee, Sydney Scrimenti, Kat Winslow, Sandra French, and John Myers. If you are joining us via live stream and you would like to add a name, please add the name into our chat. If you are joining us in person and would like to add a name, please do so.
Applefish and Billy Goldfish. Merrill Hampshire was Mickey Rosenberg and Gary Zuckerman.
We join together in our prayer for healing, page 253.
מי שברך אבותינו מקור הברכה, אבותינו, may the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. מי שברך אמותינו מקור הברכה, אמותינו, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. January 27th, important as it is the UN designated day known as Holocaust Memorial Day. It has grown a little bit more traction over the last several years. And the question becomes, why do we have that day when we have Yom HaShoah in the spring? And it's interesting if you look at just the way these two dates were chosen. Why was January 27th chosen? Yes. Correct. Perfect. Our guest gets 2 points. And welcome from New York. Yes. Welcome to Erie and welcome to Anshe Chesed. Yes, it is the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz by the Russians in 1945, right? Which was one of the, and Auschwitz stands as kind of the quintessential example of the death camp model that existed. And so when United Nations came to trying to figure out which day to pick, it really, they chose that as the end of that experience. Makes sense. It's a significant date. It's a remarkable time. Certainly for those who were liberated, it must have been an incredible experience. And for those who came into those camps to help and liberate and care for those people who were there, it was a horrific scene of absolute human suffering. And so to celebrate the end of that seems perfect. Yes? So why then did, when Israel was established, and which predates this January 27th date being marked by anything, but when Israel was established in 48, there was lots of conversation. We have to mark Holocaust in some way. Do we link it to the other calamities that have occurred to the Jewish people and let it join the list on Tisha B'Av, which would include things like the destruction of the first temple in 586, the destruction of the second temple in 70 of the Common Era, the expulsion of the Jews from a few different places in Europe, including the Spanish Inquisition beginning, and there were some Holocaust dates connected to that as well. And there was a big pushback. They said all of those are different, but the Holocaust stands in a class of its own. And even more than that, what we want to commemorate is not only the intense and horrible suffering, but the incredible bravery that was shown by so many during that period. And so instead of choosing a date that was symbolic of suffering and being the victim, they chose a very important date, which is the beginning of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And that, because that was also a quintessential symbol of uprising. And we have this sort of image that was it. But if you look at the histories of the camps and the ghettos and the experiences, there were resistance programs and uprisings in almost every single instance in every single camp. And as we read through some of the firsthand accounts and we realize that just living a day, an extra day, was an incredible symbol of resistance. today I had the opportunity to, there are no coincidences, right? There are no coincidences in the world. So today happens to be my grandmother's yahrzeit, this day. 6th of Shvat. So it starts tonight. This morning I had the chance to be at McDowell High School, where a group of students had put together this Holocaust Memorial Day program. None of them are Jewish. You should know. None of them are Jewish. None of them really know Jews. There aren't all that many Jews there to begin with. Abby's looking at me like, yeah, huh? There are probably more Jews at Mercyhurst than there are at McDowell. Strangely enough. Mercyhurst is our Catholic, yeah, okay. So I had the opportunity, and what we did was we did an opportunity for me to share my family story in brief, which is this remarkable story of a young girl, my grandmother, who was born 100 years ago this year, and grew up in the midst really of the beginnings of Nazi Germany. And by the time she was a young teenager, was in the throes of it. And her father was arrested as part of the Kristallnacht roundups. And he was of that ilk that said, they'll never bother with me. They're never gonna touch me. I'm a loyal German. He was a decorated officer in the First World War. He thought he was safe. By the time, of course, he gets arrested in 1939 and realizes this is not the case, and has to bribe his way out of Germany. Because it wasn't that you could leave if you had enough money, number one. Number two, you had to have a place to go. And the Germans were careful in how they constructed this, because the rest of the world really was not super interested in having Jews come and move there. In fact, there wasn't a single country that really said, okay, yes, please come. Right? Certainly Canada, which is where I grew up, the famous quote by the prime minister there was in response to the question, well, how many Jews would be okay to come to Canada? And the response was, none is too many. Here in the United States, we have the example of Renee, who was on the St. Louis, a ship that was that came down that was supposed to be into the United States and ended up then going to Cuba, and was refused over and over and over all the way up, including Canada and the US and Cuba, although a few got off in Cuba if you had enough money. You could get off in Cuba if you had a lot of money. We had those experiences, and these were countries who completely rejected any sort of immigration. And so my grandmother ended up traveling with her parents to Shanghai. Why Shanghai of all places? Well, the narrative in terms of the Chinese narrative is, well, we were welcoming to the Jews. The reality was that there was nobody watching the door. It was an open city. It was an international city, which meant that you had an American section, a British section, a Russian section, the French section, whatever. And they didn't want anybody deciding who was able to come in. So the port was open. So as long as you could get there, you could go. And so they end up, my grandmother's uncle went in earlier in 37 or 38. And so he sort of was then writing home to say, hey, look, it's good here. Why don't you come? And it actually took my grandmother's parents until August of 1940 to decide to leave Berlin. Really almost sort of on the last train kind of experience. And they bribed their way out basically and traveled by train and then boat to Shanghai, where my grandmother meets my grandfather. They have this incredible love affair that happens. He is this sort of dashing, fairly affluent Italian Jewish guy, and she is selling candy in the hotel, and they meet, and neither of them really spoke each other's language. She spoke no Italian, he spoke no German. They both spoke what we would consider high school English, you know, but the language of love is beautiful. And 3 months later, they got married. As my grandmother would tell the story, her father was angry with the rabbi, naturally. And so he didn't want the rabbi doing the wedding. And so the Italian consulate did the wedding. She said, we went, she didn't understand a word. At some point, your grandfather went like this to me. I nodded my head and we got married. And then they were taken by the Japanese. When the Japanese invaded, they were taken to a Japanese concentration camp in northern China. And they spent 2 years there with my infant mother at the time. My mother was only 2 months old. And they sort of bribed their way through that, or faked their way through that. My grandfather passed himself off as a cook. If I tell you, he was from a fairly affluent, upper class Italian Jewish family. The man had never boiled water. Literally, had never touched anything. But he passes himself off as the cook because he knows that if you're the cook, you're close to two things: food and warmth. And he is an infant. And so, yeah. And they're liberated in 45 when the war ends. And then they stay in Shanghai actually for 3 years because, again, nobody wants the Jews. And so it takes until 48 before they're able to secure even a visitor's visa to get to. First of all, they wouldn't even allow them a visitor's visa to the United States, where his parents had gone before the war in 38. And the US wouldn't even give them a visitor's visa. The Canadians gave them a visitor's visa, and his parents came up from New York and they met in Montreal. And while they were there, the Communist Revolution breaks out in China. Bad if you're, a Westerner. And of course, now they qualify for refugee status. So they were able to stay in Canada and become citizens and et cetera. The rest is history, as they say. The resilience in those stories, those epic stories of families doing what they needed to do to just survive another day, is, I think one of the most telling experiences of strength that we have. And so as we look at this, Holocaust Memorial Day, and it's, certainly important. And as I was teaching today, it was very clear that most of the kids in the room, and these are high school students, self-selected to come to this event, had no clue really about what it was. They really had no sense of Holocaust or what the realities were, what happened or why or whatever. And we had a good conversation around it. And we then watched a part of the documentary about the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, which sort of, brings it home. That this is what happens when hatred is let fester. And, as young people and they're trying to figure out their own way in the world and how they react and what they do, part of it was, how do you respond? And because it starts with the casual and comments and the off-color jokes and all of that. And it leads you incredibly quickly to these disasters. So it was a interesting day. So, as we observe, this day, although it's not a Jewish celebration, right? It's not a Jewish commemoration, rather. But it's one that we sort of participate in because it's about us, right? It's not ours, but it's about us. Because in fact, when we do Yom HaShoah, and tragically, we actually only say half the phrase, right? Because it's really, the commemoration is really Yom HaShoah Ugvura, commemorating the disaster and the strength. And those two are always, paired together. But I just wanted to sort of share that with you tonight and share my grandmother's story, because of course it was her yahrzeit this evening, and it just felt that telling those stories is important. And it's easy to think of and talk about numbers, 6 million, 12 million. That doesn't connect, right? But when you know the one person or the two people, or you learn a name of another person, then it becomes even more powerful. So her name was Eva. Shabbat Shalom. We'll turn together to page 282, and we'll rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, lateit gedula leyotzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam. V'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim ve'oser haaretz umoshav yikarom hashamayim imah u'shchinatu zo Begovei meromim, hu Eloheinu einod, emet malkeinu efezulato, kachatu betorato, be'adat hayom, v'hashevota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, Vashamayim imah ve'aretz mitachat einod v'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Please be seated. We have lived in numberless towns and villages, and in too many of them we have endured cruel suffering. Some we have forgotten. Others are sealed in our memory, a wound that does not heal. 100 generations of victims and martyrs, still their blood cries out from the earth. And so many at Dachau, at Buchenwald, at Babi Yar. What can we say? What can we do? How bear the unbearable or accept what life has brought to our people? All who are born must die. But how shall we compare the slow passage of time with the callous slaughter of the innocent, cut off before their time? They lived with faith, not all, but many. And surely many died with faith in God, in life, in the goodness that even flames cannot destroy. May we find a way to the strength of that faith, that trust, that sure sense that life and soul endure beyond this body's death. They have left their lives to us. Let a million prayers rise whenever Jews worship. Let a million candles glow against the darkness of these unfinished lives. We are in the period of Shiva for Dolores Galt, and we observe Yahrzeit on this Shabbat for William Falk, Minnie Ostheimer, Greta Sender, Adolf Hart, Isabel Falk, Gustav Harf, Emil Cohen, Herman Wolf, Eva Salinas, Myrna Urkov, M. Garson Fall, Carrie Frank, Laura Goldsmith, Dora Bernstein, Helen Jacobson, Gertrude Meyer, Sidney Hyman, Hannah Lobman, Kaufman Kauler, Greg Thorpe, Carrie Schuster Schaffner, Benjamin Leon Bernstein, Benjamin Zaks, A.L. Rao, Abraham Oppenheimer, Fanny Strouth-Prager, Sam Sherman, Bess Pinsky Stone, Lillian Ratner Cohen. If you are joining us via live stream and you have a name that you would like to add, please do so. If you're here in person and would like to add a name, please do so as I look around. We turn together to the words of Kaddish, page 294. Please rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach rutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei chon u'v'yomei chon, u'v'chayei b'chol beit Yisrael, l'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam l'ameh almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dikudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrumav.
Hu ya'aseh shalom.
Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. I'd like to invite Rochelle Krawinski forward to share some announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to be here. As always, thank you, Rabbi and Jesse, for the wonderful music. You make up for some of us who lack any musical talent whatsoever. Thank goodness. Services tomorrow begin at 10 a.m. We have Shabbat morning service and Torah studies starts at 11. Both are available in person or by Zoom. And a week from tonight, we'll be celebrating TGIS and Tabu Shabbat Seder. So please come and join us. We're looking forward to that. And I think there's planning a wonderful event so we can celebrate being together, and bring your favorite fruit or nut dessert to share with the group. And if there are any questions at any time, please contact the office. We have, if you have any questions about programs or anything whatsoever, our temple administrator, Karen, and Kathy Wise is available if you have any questions about any of the financial matters. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We're glad you're feeling better.
Me too.
So we'll conclude this evening with Od Yavo Shalom, may peace come soon.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam. Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam, 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 aleinu ve'al kolam, salam, salam.
Please join in Kiddush.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'rotzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'yahavahu v'ratzon v'nechiyanu. Zikaron lema'aseh b'reishit, ki hu yom techillah l'mikra'e kodesh, zerchem tziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta Mikolim v'shat kodshecha ve'ava u'ratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Chaim. Let's join together.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.